Okay. All right. Hello, friends. I'm Rish. Welcome to the Product Marketing Show. Today, I have Jimmy Daly, the co-founder and CEO for Superpath, the number one career resource for content marketers. Jimmy, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Glad to be here chatting with you.
Jimmy, can you quickly take us through your background and what kind of work you do?
Yeah, sure. I've spent the last 12 years or so working in B2B content marketing in one fashion or another. Everything from content creation to sales to now running a content business. Um, and then, now today I run Superpath. Company's about 2 years old. Started as a Slack community for content marketers. That's still the core of the business, and we generate revenue in a few different ways through a job board. We have a paid membership, and then we also have a marketplace where we match freelance writers with companies who need content created. So that's a quickie overview, but that's what I've been up to for most of the last decade.
Lovely. So I should the first question is mostly around marketing funnels, right? So if I divide the marketing funnel into three layers: awareness, consideration, and conversion. In your view, which type of content works in which part of the funnel?
That's interesting. I feel like it's fairly dependent on the type of business, right? We talk a lot in Superpath about matching content strategy to business model, and I feel like this idea is has gained traction. I feel like it's executed much better nowadays than it used to be. The general kind of gist of it is that say you have a fairly inexpensive product and you're pursuing like a product led growth strategy. You need a lot of volume. You're relying heavily on SEO. You probably need a lot more content just to generate awareness. The other end of that spectrum would be like an enterprise software company, or maybe even a professional services business where the volume is not so important because you're closing bigger deals, sales is heavily involved, long sales cycles, that kind of thing. So then I would be thinking about in either case, um, what type of content serves the business model best, and then kind of working backwards to figure out exactly what resources are needed, right? So like in the enterprise software model, like the conversion stuff is probably a lot of content on integrations, a lot about product updates, a lot of stuff, a lot of case studies and customer stories, and that type of thing that sales could put to use. Um, so yeah, I mean, I hate to say it depends, but I feel like it does end up depending. Like what that looks like depends a lot on the business and kind of the very specific needs that company has.
Let's stick with the enterprise software domain. And since you mentioned more content around middle and the bottom of the funnel, right? Especially when you mentioned about case studies, I've seen a lot of like uh, I've seen a lot of traction around video case studies, right?
hmm
I'm not sure how good they are, where do you use them. Can you share some rights on what type of case study content will work and where should the company invest?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I feel like I've seen more video case studies recently. And I think that's a wonderful trend. Like I'm actually quite a fan of, um, over the past couple of years with the pandemic, I feel like the barrier to entry is much lower on video nowadays because people aren't necessarily expecting like super high production value. You can make a video, right from your computer. And I've actually seen some really cool testimonials. Actually, those are the types of testimonials that we use, where we ask someone to like record themselves on Loom or QuickTime or something. Um, Kind of more broadly, I think that case studies that don't look like case studies are the best types. So when I was at Animals, we did a few case studies. There was one in particular that we did with a company called Ad Espresso, who had been a great customer of ours. Their blog had experienced like insane growth, like 10x growth over like 3 or 4 years, and we did a really deep dive on that. But we didn't position it in the way that most case studies are positioned. It wasn't how animals helped Ad Espresso achieve X. The
Mhm.
article observed a trend and then used Ad Espresso as the example to illustrate that trend. So as you're reading it, you don't necessarily realize it's a case study until kind of like later on when we mention, oh, they're one of our
Mhm.
clients.
And
We were involved in this.
and and uh, and how important is storytelling while doing this, right? Because I mean, there is no dearth of content these days, especially in the video side. Uh, how much focus would you put in on storytelling in terms of case studies?
On creating lots of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you use storytelling frameworks in creating case studies?
Hmm. That's interesting. That's interesting. I feel like what I described, the process we use at Animals, where we tried to identify a larger trend and then use that customer's experience as the example to illustrate it, is a pretty good way to incorporate storytelling into your case studies. From a video perspective, I imagine you could do basically the same thing, right? Like we create content, like so. As part of our membership, we create a lot of video content. Typically, it's the same process where we have a topic or a trend that we're going to basically report on, and then I pull in people to run interviews with to understand their experience and and their insights on that particular thing. In some of those cases, Superpath is helping those people accomplish those things. Like we don't necessarily call that out every single time, but sometimes we do, and I feel like that sort of turns it into a case study, even if that wasn't like the direct intention of it. I feel like too. One of the issues with video case studies, at least this is sort of my experience, is that because it's user generated content often, and there's not necessarily like a host interviewing and asking all the right questions. It's more the person just sort of doing it independently. Is you sort of just get what you get, So like anything you can do to guide that person, to guide the person that's helping you create that testimonial or case study is really important. Making sure that they have good questions that they can answer. That they have some kind of script that can help keep them on track, so that if you ask people to do this, that you get good stuff in return.
Excellent. I mean, we've taken the same cue, so we have a producer on the other side when we record case studies ourselves, and they ask questions, and because sometimes the customers just say something on top of their head, but you need to get to the pain, you need to dig a bit deeper, and that can only be by curious questions.
Yeah.
In terms of video marketing, and I know video marketing is also part of content marketing, what are the new trends which you are seeing, and where do you see video marketing headed in the future?
Wow, that's really interesting, because I feel like we're seeing two divergent trends happening at the exact same time. One of those trends would be like pretty professionally produced content. So like examples I can think of off the top of my head would be there's a company called 360 Learning that created a docu-series called Onboarding Joey. Joey was a woman that they hired to run their content marketing. They created this really high-end, kind of like reality TV show type content, kind of documenting her experience as a new employee. Another one I saw recently was Patrick Campbell, founder of a company called Profitwell, recently sold the business, and he created this cool docu-series, just sort of like, keeping track of his experience. Like now I haven't seen it yet. I'm not sure if they've published it yet, but like, I'm very interested to see what that's like. Over the years, I feel like companies like Wistia have done some really high-end content. So that's one trend. And I feel like the other trend is the uptick of, I guess what I would call lower end video content, where it's just like people recording recording themselves from their laptop, or even just recording their own screen to show what they're doing. So like examples in that world that I can think of are like a business like MakerPad is not basically, I don't want to oversimplify it. It's a cool business, but like a lot of it is tutorial videos that have been created by members of their community, right? Like it's not super polished, but it is authentic and it is very helpful. And then Superpath is probably another good example. Like we create a lot of content, but it's mostly user generated video, where, like for example, we ran a series called 5 Minutes on Content, and we had a bunch of smart content marketers give a 5-minute presentation on a single idea related to content strategy or promotion or reporting or whatever. Those were just Loom videos that we had them record, and then we published on our YouTube channel. We do things like office hours, where we just have like some smart person come hang out on Zoom. People can ask them questions. We record it all and publish it. Those things are like pretty low effort. The production quality is not high, but the content itself is really good. So I think that's a great trend, but I find it interesting that sort of both things are happening at the same time. Easier to create, really professional video content, and like some teams are really leaning into that. And then there's this kind of quote unquote lower end, which is now far more accessible, but creating a lot of really cool stuff as well.
Even I love the quick and dirty video space. I mean, especially in the advent of short videos like TikTok and the vertical video, that Instagram stories. One question I had, do they really work for B2B business? I mean, I get it work for communities, B2C, e-commerce. Do they work for like enterprise software or B2B SaaS in your view?
That's interesting. I mean, I think so. I mean, I guess I don't have recent proof, right? Like, when I was at Animals, we did a couple kind of video. I mean, we did webinars, of course. We did a couple of like live workshops that we recorded and then published later. And those definitely worked. Like, we had quite a bit of interest in those things. I have not recently been part of any video content for an enterprise software company. Nor have I purchased enterprise software recently, so I haven't like consumed much of it. But I mean, my gut is, yeah, definitely it can work. But you know, I feel like for video to be good, it's not just that it has to be well produced. It also, like, there should be a strong concept that makes it interesting, right? Like just two people, you know, having small talk and sort of, you know, not having like a nice agenda for what they're going to cover. Like, that's not that interesting, right? But if you have a strong concept, and you have interesting people, and you run whatever your thing is, well, your office hours, your webinar, your workshop, or whatever it is, and then that can be very interesting. So, you know, in the same way that, just writing for a keyword is not as interesting as writing something about a strong concept, I would apply that same thinking to video.
Lovely. I get that. I was actually skimming through LinkedIn. This is the last question. And I was looking at your really, I think, 7 years old article, Unsexy Strategies on Long-Term Growth. I mean, I really love that article, especially the way you presented how long-term investing is bringing the same concepts to content marketing. What are your top 2 or 3 tips for young B2B SaaS who have just started up or don't have huge budgets? How should they go about doing content marketing?
Yeah, I think that SEO is important, and a lot of what that article you're mentioning, there was a lot in there about SEO. You know, the compound growth. You got to start early. You sort of have to make your deposit so you can draw on them later, kind of thing. And so I think for newish companies, like, you got to do some SEO. What I wouldn't do is go export a massive list of keywords out of SEMrush and just start working through them. I wouldn't do that. I would think about 5, maybe 10 keywords that are really important and that could move the needle for your business if you ranked well for them. And I would consider that one lane for your content. And then another lane that I would think about early on is some type of thought leadership. There's actually, I wrote an article about this on the Animals blog a few years ago. We came up with this concept that we called movement first content. And the idea was that for companies who are relatively early, that they should basically focus on the concepts and the values of their business. And they should basically use content to kind of plant a flag around those concepts and ideas to sort of make them theirs. And to focus really on strong ideas, great writing, really high quality. Don't worry so much about SEO for those posts, but just to build a really strong foundation. I think in tandem, those two things can work really well. Like a little bit of SEO content to help you get up and running, and then, you know, more focus on the thought leadership style content just to help you like get in the habit of like kind of working through your ideas, turning them into great content, and making sure that people know like you can do a lot more than just write, you know, good ultimate guide to, you know, whatever keyword. You know, you can provide like really thoughtful, interesting content for the readers.
Lovely. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you so much for taking your time. If our viewers would want to connect with you or become part of the community, how can they do that?
Best thing to do is to go to superpath.co. You'll find everything there. The Slack community is open to anyone who works in content marketing, whether it's in-house or freelance. So we would love to have folks there. We have a lot of cool stuff happening in there. So that's the place to get everything.
Lovely. Thank you so much for your time, Jimmy. Really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.